Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. I'm John Marino, and we are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities right through April of 2021. Lipolis Electric, don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis. Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard, and White Plains Hospital. Our thanks to all those over at White Plains for all they've done throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. We are joined here on the Sports Report by Josh Thompson, the sports editor at the Journal News, lowhud.com, and Poughkeepsie Journal. Josh, we welcome you back here to talk about high school sports and more on the Sports Report. It's been quite a time. About 10 days ago, Governor Cuomo gave the okay for high-risk winter sports to begin, and schools started to get things together for a winter sports season, which seemingly now would include basketball, hockey, and wrestling, among other high-risk sports. Section 1, Section 9 gave the okay to get things going, seemingly, and then all of a sudden, a halt has been put on everything. Some confusion comes about a few days ago. Where do we stand now with this?
Well, you know, in Section 1, and that's 4 different counties, which is Westchester, Putnam, Rockland, and parts of Dutchess. All teams are eligible to proceed as of Monday, February 1st. Obviously, the snowstorm changed things for February 1st and 2nd, Monday and Tuesday. But they will be in action on Wednesday at practice. Can't say every school will be, but, you know, certainly I would think the bulk of the schools, I've checked in with a few folks, and they plan on having tryouts or practice on Wednesday. There are some schools in that won't be as of right now, which are in Rockland County. The superintendents in Rockland County are waiting, you know, further, I guess, more explicit in writing approval from their Department of Health. So that's what they're still waiting on that. Yeah, I think the confusion really stemmed from the fact that whether it was Section 1 of the schools, they didn't believe that they had been granted approval from the local health departments. And George Latimer has said several times since then that last Wednesday's announcement from the county executives in Rockland and Westchester and Putnam and Dutchess was declaring or granting authority, you know, with the consent of the health departments. Mm-hmm. I think that in Section 1, they had been telling athletic directors that they were awaiting further approval, awaiting guidelines. And I do believe the health departments are going to send guidelines to the schools, additional guidelines or areas of concern. But it is not related to approval. That approval has been granted and, you know, was granted prior to the county executives announcing their decisions on, you know, last Wednesday. That was the go-ahead.
Now, George Latimer, the Westchester County executive, got together and had a meeting with the county executives of all the other counties from Section 1 and Section 9, where all the schools are located, like you pointed out. Section 1, Westchester, Putnam, Rockland, and Southern Dutchess. Section 9, Orange, Ulster, Sullivan, and Northern Dutchess County. Did the county executives jump the gun a bit on this and saying, okay, go ahead and play?
I don't think so. You know, it's kind of hard to, you know, when you look back on everything Latimer has said and what was in the press release, and now, you know, the result, which is that practices are able to be held when schools do return from the snowstorm. I don't think so. There has been no further guidance from the Department of Health, and now the Section 1 schools, with the exception of Rockland County, are going to go ahead with practice. So, you know, it's my belief from based on our reporting and everything that Latimer has said and the other county executives had said in their announcement last week that approval was within that announcement, you know, from the health departments. I don't know the exact wording off the top of my head, but it did say, you know, with the guidance of the county health, I think it was said public health officials, you know, which obviously is the county health department. I do know that on Friday, January 29th, that the leaders from the 4 county health departments did meet in the morning and in the afternoon to go over the decision But again, Latimer's office has reiterated that that is not based on approval and is just really based on additional guidance that those health departments are going to provide.
Now, for these high-risk winter sports like basketball, like hockey, like wrestling, and more, it'll be a shorter than usual season. These seasons will overlap into a fall too with football and other high-risk fall sports, and also the spring sports season. Everything is going to be kind of bunched up. Do athletic directors and coaches around the region feel like they are kind of maybe being pushed into getting things going a bit too quickly, whereas before, if they could have gotten things going in January, like the original plan provided for winter sports, that they'd be in probably better position to get things rolling for the high-risk winter sports?
Well, I'm definitely sure that that's true. And unfortunately, if for that, there was really approval that was needed from the governor's office. So the only preparing that teams and schools could do prior to that announcement, like you said, about a week and a half ago, was kind of behind the scenes. There wasn't really much in the way of getting athletes ready to go. I think that announcement was a surprise, and then it said February 1st, which I believe at that time was only 9 days out from the day of the announcement. So it's definitely been somewhat of a rush. There are, though, some criteria that are normally in place that have either been lifted or have been reduced. You don't have to get a physical for all the athletes. They're trying to keep them from all being together, I think, in health offices and whatnot. And I think if you, it basically is if I had a physical to one of the previous 2 years, you're approved, and you just kind of need permission from the health office. There is some wording in the state's health requirements that basically say, that the health officers at a school could require certain athletes to get, further screening. Perhaps that could be athlete. It doesn't say this explicitly, but perhaps that could be athletes who may have contracted COVID. Maybe that's a different requirement. I know in Section 9 they've had free health screenings for athletes who have had had COVID in the past. So that was one requirement that was lifted, which will expedite the process of preparing for the season. And in terms of the overlap is going to not be as great as it seems. It's only a week overlap for both seasons. However, that week will only be for teams that play to the absolute final date. There will probably be some playoff tournaments in there. And so if your team doesn't make the championship game, or, you'll be out earlier, so it won't be a full week overlap. And then additionally, the state, and this was back in the fall, I believe, they reduced the amount of practices you would need going from season to season. So you'll get some credit for practicing. If you play basketball, you'll get some practice credits going into the football season. Likewise, a girls basketball player will get some credit for some practices completed going into the volleyball season. And then same thing for going in from those seasons into the spring season. So the overlap is not probably going to be as significant maybe as it would seem. We're not used to these overlaps. I think the bigger question will be the physical toll on the athletes from going from one season to the next. But we see, teams that have made state football championship games and kids coming back a couple days later to play. And, it might take them a little while to get their basketball legs or hockey legs or what have you. But, this is something that's fairly common for teams that advance deep into the playoffs. It'll probably just affect a greater percentage of teams now than it would normally. But again, this is the hand we're dealt. You're trying to play 3 seasons between February, March, April, May, and some of June. There's going to have to be some sort of overlap, some sort of time crunch. And if you want to play, and I think if you ask the athletes, and I've asked a couple of them, that they don't really care.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't it? I know they want to get things rolling, but doesn't it seem risky to allow kids to play without a physical? Things change, bodies change fast sometimes.
Right. I think that's a fair question. I do think that the state, I kind of trust that the state, at the time they made that decision, had put some thought into it and talked to some medical some medical experts about it. And I think that there is your local school health office does have some say in that. So I do think that there is at least a layer of protection that's in there. I just don't think it's as strict of a requirement as it's been in the past.
Josh Thompson, sports editor, Journal News, lowhud.com, and the Poughkeepsie Journal. Josh, how would scheduling work? Are most teams set and ready to go with schedules awaiting this day where they can get the winter season underway?
Well, as of Monday afternoon, they hadn't been released on the section website for Section 1 teams in terms of basketball and hockey, which will be the first two sports that are going to continue. However, we did publish yesterday, Section 1 released their league alignments that will be used for basketball, boys and girls, and then hockey is a separate set of league alignments. What they're going to do is they're even more geographic based than usual, and the bulk of the schedule is going to come from those leagues. So you might have a 5-team league, you might play the other 4 teams. Those might be 8 of your games. A maximum number of games is 12, and even some of the crossovers that were kind of suggested in the schedule are based on some really strict geography, meaning that you could see something like and I don't know that this game is on the schedule, but I know it was at one point, a Rye playing a Mount Vernon and New Rochelle, and normally they wouldn't play those games, but the idea is to give teams that are in a real close proximity a chance to schedule some games more easily and kind of limit the travel during during a time where you want as little travel as possible. So I do think that the schedules will be geared largely around those leagues that we put out on lowhud.com on Monday, and that'll be the bulk of the schedule for most teams.
And there will be, I guess, as you alluded to, some kind of a postseason at least.
Yeah, it'll be similar to the fall. It hasn't kind of taken shape yet. I think, frankly, it's probably something that's pretty fluid right now. And I think the reason is because, frankly, the section right now hasn't heard from whole entire school districts that don't plan on playing. But will there be some that don't plan on playing? Will there be some that don't plan on wrestling? That, I think, is the big question. I think there will be some that might not play sports or might not have wrestling. And so I think that kind of makes everything fluid. In the fall, there were 6 regional tournaments in different sports. In Westchester, there were large and small school events. Rockland had just a Rockland event. Dutchess had just a Dutchess event. And, I think that's what they're kind of aiming for, more regionalized tournaments at the end of the year. And I just don't think until they know exactly how many teams are going to participate that those postseasons will take shape. I think that'll happen at some point this month.
Key question, will fans be allowed?
As of right now, no fans will be permitted to attend the basketball, hockey, and wrestling events, with the exception of one designated senior day where 2 fans, presumably parents or anybody who's close to that senior athlete, will be able to attend. So you're talking about, if there are 12 players on a team and 6 seniors, you're talking about one game from the entire season where, 12 fans will be able to attend. So it's going to be a very limited number of fans in attendance this season. And that is for all indoor sports. Outdoor sports, as of right now, will follow the restrictions that were placed on the teams in the fall, which is 2 fans per home athlete. So that's what it's looking like right now. Obviously, I could see that being something that's subject to change over time as, maybe infection rates drop, more people are vaccinated, the weather improves, blah, 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 things like that. So, but yeah, right now there won't be any fans of any kind for winter sports, with the exception of the 2 fans per senior athlete and only on senior day.
And I think we should point out all of this is subject to change at any time.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that this is something that'll be pretty fluid. I mean, will it change during the winter season? I doubt it. The winter season is going to be over March 13th, which frankly is not that long from now.
Right. Yeah.
5 or 6 weeks from now. So I don't see that changing, but I do see it, perhaps changing in the months of March and April, and certainly could see it changing in the spring. And that's just based on my opinion, but you have to assume, things in New York State are slowly headed in the right direction in terms of infection rate and hospitalizations and things like that. So, I could see it changing over the next 5 months.
Did Section 9 work in lockstep with Section 1 on this too? The guidelines in Section 9 pretty much the same as Section 1?
Yeah, they did. But we have a story going up today on the Middletown Times Herald Record website about this. And Section 9 is still has some wrinkles to iron out. There's definitely, I know Ulster County had some stricter requirements from its health department, and I think that they're a little bit more in a wait and see mode. I think that it sounds like Section 9 Executive Director Greg Ransom expects a fair amount of wrestling schools to not have wrestling teams this winter. I think that'll happen in Section 1 too, but he's been pretty vocal about the fact that he expects that to happen on a pretty broad basis. So they're probably a little bit behind, but I expect the basketball season up there to get started at some point this week as well.
Have you heard about individual schools? Now you talked about the Rockland situation and the other counties in Section 1 and Section 9. Any schools have you heard about that might opt out?
In Section 1 so far, and this is as of today, I was told that no full school districts have planned to opt out. I have heard some rumblings that there may be at least a couple that delay the start by a little bit. I could see that happening. Kind of from what you mentioned before, has it been rushed to start the season? I think some schools have definitely felt rushed. I think some of them have felt rushed, but appreciative. They'd rather be rushed than be still in wait and see mode. I think others have probably just felt plain rushed. So, I think you'll see that. But so far, no schools have decided to opt it out. I had heard of a smaller school in Westchester County that had discussed it, but then I heard later today that they plan on playing. So, I think there will be some pressure now with schools and neighboring school districts opting to go ahead to play. For schools to play, and I do think, what we've seen so far in neighboring states, New Jersey and Connecticut, and certainly other states around the country, I believe all states now, except for Illinois and Hawaii, have plans for a basketball season. I think 35 states played football in the fall. So I do think that does create some pressure internally. And, you saw some large percentage of them are football coaches, but, a lot of football coaches rallying around the idea and trying to get politicians on their side to encourage state leaders to allow them to play this winter and this fall 2 season, which is early spring. Did that have an impact, or was this the plan all along? I don't think we'll really know. The governor's office hasn't taken questions on this, so it's hard to know kind of what went into that. I do think, it was largely related to kind of seeing infection rates start to head in a positive direction, and also to getting through that holiday surge. And I think once, mid to late January came around, I think there was always going to be a better chance that high-risk sports got the opportunity to play, and that's what's happened.
And people I've spoken to, too, have said they'd rather have some kind of a season than no season at all. So let's shift over to local college sports, too. The COVID pandemic affecting the Fordham men's basketball season. Took a while for the Rams to get going. Iona has been on a variety of different pauses for almost 2 months now. The Gales, though, supposedly are back set and ready to go in about a week.
Yeah, they're supposed to play February 10th. It was, and just to tell you how fluid this is, it was supposed to be against St. Peter's. Now it's going to be on the road at Marist because St. Peter's is filling in for a different team this weekend. And, that would have had them, I guess, a little bit of a time crunch in terms of jamming a lot of games in. So instead of St. Peter's, it's going to be Marist and Iona in the revamped MAC schedule, where Iona was given 9 games and was going to not play 7 of them. Marist was a team that wasn't going to play at all. And they were actually supposed to play twice this weekend. So now it's going to be Iona going up to Marist. It will end a 49-day pause, which is so far and away the longest in program history. The previous longest was roughly a month, where they waited for a postseason Catholic Invitational tournament back in the mid-'50s. So just to show you how long ago that was. And this is, nearly twice as long. So this is tough. And I think, they have enough players back at practice, I believe, as of today or yesterday, to play a game this weekend, and they did have those 2 Marist games scheduled. But I think that there's just a point where it becomes a health issue. You know, how quickly can you rush a team back to the court after having so few practices since basically December 30th? They've been off. They had a few days, believe it was 4 practices where they had returned in mid-January before pausing again. They've had 9 players out of 16 on the roster, I think it is, who have contracted COVID now at this point. Several of them recently, a few of them actually this time had symptoms where they were they were hampered physically. So I think there was a lot to take into account. And I think that's why, although they could technically have come back to play this weekend coming up against Marist, they're now getting that extra, 5 or 6 days, and they'll play February 10th. But it is interesting, John, because it's going to be tough for them tough to even know what to expect from them. They now have 9 games left. That'll get them to 13 MAC games. They'll be eligible if they can get. I believe they've played 8. They have to play 5 more to be eligible for the NCAA tournament. But right now, it's hard to even think MAC tournament, NCAA tournament, because you don't know what they're going to be able to produce over these last 9 games. It's obviously been a really difficult 1.5 months for Iona. They haven't played since December 23rd against Coppin State, so before Christmas, and they've barely practiced since then. So it's going to be difficult to know what to expect from Rick Pitino's team when they do come back.
Now, it seems like the pandemic has not struck some of the bigger schools around the area, St. John's, UConn, Seton Hall, Rutgers. Those schools, they have had to deal with the pandemic from the standpoint of having their opponents come down with COVID and having games canceled along the way. Along the way, we've seen some star players emerge like James Bouknight of UConn and Ron Harper Jr., son of the former Chicago Bull, Michael Jordan's old running mate. Both of those two seemingly are in the running now for National Player of the Year, though Bouknight got hurt recently. That'll affect his chances.
Yeah, it's different at larger conference schools, John, because they have the resources to test more regularly. I know that when I spoke to Rick Pitino a couple of weeks ago, he kind of bemoaned the testing situation that Iona was using, saying that their lab that they've been using, sometimes they'll get, I think he had said when they had the issue a couple of weeks ago where he got COVID and some of his players, that they had sent out tests on a Wednesday and a Friday, and the Friday results came back before the Wednesday results. Yeah, at large conference schools, they're doing rapid testing, whether it's on a daily basis or close to a daily basis, and they're getting more expedited test results. And I definitely think that that's helped. That he didn't say this specifically, but I think it's pretty clear that Iona was holding practices with positive players who were positive, and they didn't know. So I think that that's something that, not to say that doesn't happen at larger schools, because we've seen, larger schools that have had, some issues, like you said, with testing and having going on pause and shutting down, but it hasn't been nearly as prevalent as it's been at smaller schools. And I think it's just a matter of resources and, how they can test and trace and things like that. I think that's been the difference, what you've seen between an Iona and a Fordham and places like Rutgers and St. John's.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, last year's National Player of the Year, local kid from Ossining High School, Obi Toppin, of course, played for Dayton, the Flyers, won the Wooden Award last year, off to a decent start with the Knicks despite his calf injury.
Yeah, I think that he's probably been a little slower to get going than Knick fans would have hoped. He's an older rookie after, a year of prep school, a year of Prop 48, and then 2 years at Dayton. He's an older rookie than, he's like, for example, he's far older already than RJ Barrett, who's in his second year in the NBA. So I think that Knick fans are hoping that Obi would take off more quickly. He's very athletic. He's got some skills offensively. Defense has certainly been the issue with him, and people wonder if he can defend swingman at this level. And I think it's to be expected that any rookie will have some adjustment period, but I think the Knicks and Knick fans and Obi Toppin fans from Westchester, they're going to want to see him kind of progress as the season goes on. But, it's still early. And like you mentioned, the calf injury kept him out 8 or 9 games. And, that's difficult. You come in, John, you play the preseason, you play one game, and I think you played about half that game. He had a decent game his first night, and then basically you don't play for another 3 or 4 weeks. That's challenging for any player to get back into a rhythm, and certainly for a rookie starting in the NBA for his the first time in his career. And I think that you'll see what he can do to adjust here the rest of the season. And look, the Knicks aren't going anywhere fast, so what a good time to test out your young players and get to know what you know about them. And I think that's the best thing you can say about Obi Toppin is that despite the fact that he's had some struggles early on here, you'd have to think that over the next 3 months he'll get a chance, whether it's to sink or swim, and he'll get a chance to see what he's done. This is not like playing the Lakers where you're going to hit a point where you're in the season, you say, okay, we got to get ready for the playoffs, no more time to let you see what you can do. He should get a chance to see what he can do over the next few months.
Yeah, but Coach Tibbs likes to win. Developing players didn't seem to be his thing in his previous stops along the way. Will this affect Obi Toppin's development?
Yeah, that is the one thing you'd wonder. Would Coach Tibbs, would he be more worried about winning than developing his young players? I think if he had more of a mixed roster, I could see that being an issue. But frankly speaking, I mean, they're so young and so inexperienced. And despite the fact that they've showed some progress this year in terms of winning games, and he seems like he's done a good job with them, you'd have to think down the stretch that he'll definitely, give the young guys some time and get to see, Emmanuel quickly play and Obi Toppin play and RJ Barrett. He's having some very streaky up and down games shooting the ball. I say you'd want to give him the green light and let's see if he can progress. And hopefully Thibodeau sticks to that.
Maybe Kevin Knox too. Maybe he gets back into the rotation because he's not in there now.
Yeah, for people like him and Frank Ntilikina, I mean, you would hope that they would get a chance to play and see what they can do. And maybe if it doesn't work out, then move on from them at the end of the season.
I leave you with this thought. All this talk about Deshaun Watson possibly coming to the Jets and that he wants to come here. Nobody ever mentioned since the day the season ended for Gang Green, nobody ever mentions the fact that they need a running back.
I just think quarterback is so important in the NFL now. I mean, look who's in the Super Bowl, right? And
right.
Look who's in the conference championship game. So I think that fans are obsessed with it, but I think in this case it's for the right reason. So I think that's a situation you have to get solved first. Running backs, not to say they're a dime a dozen, not to say they don't need to improve at that position, but certainly getting to the quarterback on defense and having a quarterback who can make plays are the two most important things right now in football.
And since I have you here, your Super Bowl prediction.
I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win fairly big. We actually had to file those for our USA Today sports group today, and I picked the Chiefs to win 41-24. And the Bucs played a really good first half last week in the NFC Championship game, but they left the door wide open in the second half, and the Packers came back and had a chance to win because the Bucs made so many mistakes, including Tom Brady, 3 picks in the second half. I don't like to see that. If you go through a quarter or a half against this Chiefs team where you're not putting up points, and in fact you're giving them extra possessions, you're in for trouble. And I think that the Bucs, well, they've had a great season, and what Brady's doing is amazing. 42 years old, incredible. I just don't see that continuing. I think the Chiefs win fairly comfortably on Sunday.
I think a closer game. I say Chiefs 27-23, and with Tom Brady, hey, who knows? As a Jets fan, you hate to see it, but with him, who knows? Anything can happen. I think.
Right.
Josh Thompson, great to have you here again here on the Sports Report, Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. Josh Thompson, the sports editor for Journal News, lowhud.com, and the Poughkeepsie Journal. Josh, we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, John.
Thank you, and stay safe out there. We are brought to you by here Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities right through April of 2021. Also by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard. Look, it's electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis White Plains Hospital, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard. Also by Wartburg Healthcare and Rehabilitation in Mount Vernon, Park Sterling Realty in Bronxville, and Michael Labriola Landscape Design and Construction in Armonk. Catch all of our Westchester Talk Radio, Fairfield County Talk Radio, and all of our Lower Hudson Valley Sharc Creative Network programming, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, and now Orange County Talk Radio programming too on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube.